Howdy, this is Mackenzie Franklin from SideGame LLC here in Colorado Springs, Colorado. Watch out, we've got a bonus Best of 2022 list video here with our top 10 board games from 2022 for families. If you haven't subscribed to the channel already, please make sure that you do. It is the best way to help us grow. And for those of you already subscribed, thank you so much for the continuous support. Let's talk about the best family board games that came out in 2022. Starting off with number 10, we have Libertalia, The Winds of Galecrest. In this one, you play as Sky Pirates, and it's your job to place your different crew members onto the island to gather treasure and commit a lot of forms of backstabbery and piracy in general. The main mechanism of the game has you choosing a pirate, and based on its number, it's going to determine your order that you'll be taking actions. You'll all reveal them simultaneously, organize them, and then consecutively do your different actions, gaining treasure and trying to have the most gold by the end of the experience. My favorite part about this game are actually the different abilities of the cards. You have 40 unique cards in this deck, and you'll shuffle them up, and you only get a few of them at a time, and every single round you'll get a new hand of these characters, but it's up to the different players to decide what order is best to play them, and if you don't play some in one round, they'll carry over into the next round, which means that each game is going to play out differently based on the decisions of each player. The reason this one is on the best of family list is because it has such a low decision space that so many people are able to start and play it. All you have to do is explain that everyone's picking a card, you'll reveal them, and then the game sort of takes control. You're able to just say, okay, it's your turn, do this thing, and then as the game progresses, people will start to understand the implications of their choices a little bit more and get more invested into the experience. So I love how easy this one is to get started and play, making it a perfect family pick. So that's Libertalia, The Winds of Galecrest, my number 10. My number 9 goes to Longshot, the dice game. This is a horse racing game where you are all betting on a variety of horses using a roll and write style. Every round you're going to roll a pair of dice, and this will determine which horses are actually going to be moving, and then you'll use those dice to take actions on your own small player board. Now, one of my favorite part about this game is the fact that the cards are actually dry erase, and some of the actions you can take allow you to cross off these different markers on different horses. So every time this 2 gets rolled, the 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6 also get to move additional spaces, so you can increase your odds on the horses that you're betting on by modifying the other cards at the table. This game makes a particularly good family experience because every single member is going to be able to take the actions that they want to, and you can also commit to purchasing these different horses to get your own unique powers and abilities. I love that there are different forms of investments that are going to benefit different play styles, making it great for people of all ages. So that's my number 9, Longshot, the dice game. My number 8 goes to Framework, a game of collecting different patterns in order to meet a variety of scoring criteria. This game is abstract as all get out, as you're going to be collecting tiles in a simple drafting fashion, putting them into your own personal board and trying to satisfy different scoring criteria. For example, this middle one here needs 5 of this wooden resource around it, and once you've completed that condition, you're able to put one of your markers on top. And that's pretty much the entire game. You're going to be drafting tiles, putting them onto your board adjacent to each other, and trying to make these patterns and sequences to satisfy the scoring condition. The first person to get rid of all of their tokens wins, and now you know how to play Framework. My favorite part about this game, though, has to be how streamlined it is. It's easy to play and learn as you just start taking tiles. They've taken a lot of the fiddly natures from things like Nova Luna with the time track and action track and just made it so you are constantly just taking one tile at a time. In addition, when you're the first player, you'll get an extra spillover tile, which means that you're trying to think about the tiles that you're taking, but also what will be left over. It's easy to play and score, and this is one that once you start going, you never stop. You just keep going, playing tiles, and it's a game that you can play again and again for that satisfying experience of unlocking different combos. Anybody can play it. It does take a little bit to get good at. I myself am personally not very good at this game, but I do have a great time with it, and everybody at the table seems to be having a great time as well. So that is my number 8, Framework. My number 7 goes to Heat, Pedal to the Metal. This has you playing as racers on a variety of racetracks and managing a unique heat system. It's a small bit of deck building as you're going to be using these heat cards to pull off different actions, hitting corners, using special abilities, and then once your deck reshuffles, you'll need to cool down to remove the heat. You have this gear pond that you'll be moving up and down in order to be playing more cards every single turn, but you don't want to hit those corners too fast as you will take some failure penalties, and that can make it so that you potentially even spin out. There's a lot of customization in the box, and my favorite part about this game actually is playing with the Garage module. This allows you to draft extra cards for your deck at the beginning of each game that give you unique powers that nobody else has. It's so much fun to sort of come up with a plan with these 3 unique cards in your deck, and because your deck is so small, you are going to be cycling through it a lot, which means you get to see these bonus cards very frequently. And this game plays all the way up to 6 players currently on a variety of maps, and you can modify the difficulty as you see fit with all of the different modules, which makes this a perfect family game as it can take players of all different skill levels, and everyone will feel that they're in it. It takes a little bit to get used to that first round, feeling how that heat system works, but it's one that you'll be coming back to, wanting to race, putting that pedal to the metal. That is my number 7, Heat. My number 6 goes to Marvel Remix, a new take on Fantasy Realms as you are collecting different cards in your hand and trying to set up combos. Now this is a particularly awesome family game because it's got that Marvel theme and everybody can get invested in it if they're familiar with the different movies or different properties that it's associated with. You'll be collecting different cards that require symbols so they're easy to read and understand, and you have small numbers here so it's also easy to understand the value of certain cards. For example, you'll have Captain America here that gets additional symbols for having a lot of different icons. You'll get Black Panther who gets more bonuses for the different amount of upgrades, and this one also features some upgradable transforming cards. Bruce Banner transforms into the Hulk. It makes sense. There are some thematic ties here which couldn't be possible outside of this Marvel theme, which I'm pretty impressed with. But my favorite thing about this one has to be the addition of a separate villain deck. Whenever you take cards, you have the option to take them from the core hero deck or this villain deck, which gives you unique scoring opportunities that are on the more challenging side. So based on the way that you like to play, you can take on as many of these villains as you want, and if you want to, you can also just get rid of them if you want to focus on that pure hero strategy. So players can approach this game as they see fit, and I think that makes it a perfect family experience because it's up to the players on how they want to engage and interact with the game, but there's a theme that carries it as well. So that's my number 6, Marvel Remix. My number 5 goes to Caper Europe. Now this is the only game that's restricted to only 2 players on this whole list, but I do think that is important for a family game, as this one here is strictly 2 players, but not all the time will everybody be wanting to play games with you. With that being said though, Caper Europe is one of the best 2-player games that came out this year, period, and this has you playing as thieves traveling around Europe trying to pull off the ultimate heist. You'll be playing different cards through a drafting system to gather different influence onto these different locations to try to claim control of them in a tug-of-war fashion. There's 3 locations, you choose where your thieves go, and they'll be playing cards onto these thieves in order to hopefully win them, steal artifacts, as well as gain victory points in a variety of ways. My favorite part about this game though has to be just the different characters in the entire experience and the different cards. Every card makes sense but is also powerful and immediately impactful. I love this because each choice is a hard one because every card is so integral key and they have amazing combos that work well with each other. Another cool thing that makes this a great family game is after your initial pass of cards, you can help the other player understand what cards are happening because you are going to see that exact hand of cards as you draft them back and forth. So I love that after you take your turn, you can easily go help the other person understand what the different symbology means, and after a round or 2, everything will make sense as each symbol is appropriate for one of those aspects of the game. I love the different modular difficulties of the locations because every time you'll play, you'll be able to shuffle in a new location deck, which changes where you're playing, not only keeping it thematic, but also making it so that it can be accessible for gamers of all different skill levels. So that is my number 5, Caper Europe. My number 4 goes to Challengers. This is a new one to these lists, and it's one I want to talk about here. This is essentially a giant group tournament of war. You're going to be drafting cards to build up a deck, and then based on those cards that you've assembled, they'll come out in random fashions as you're trying to play a game of Capture the Flag. Every round, you'll be flipping cards from the top of your deck, using special powers and abilities, and trying to find matching sets when you're not actually fighting in the game. The game is interrupted in its tournament rounds through this drafting phase, where you'll get to add additional cards into your deck, and that's the key decision point here. It reminds me a lot of something like Quacks of Quedlinburg, where you're able to add new things to your deck every single round, and hopefully they come out in the order that's going to be beneficial to you. It's fun to draft the different combos, get different characters from different clans or teams, and then see how your different abilities will work as you create them and get stronger cards as time progresses. I love how the decks of cards get stronger as you progress, but there are reasons to go back and get weaker cards as you want to get cards that have the same name so you can play more of them, as there's 2 different loss conditions that you're juggling with, either running out of cards or filling up your bench with unique names. This is a game where you can tailor your strategy based on the cards that you're getting, and you can also pivot on key moments and change it up and still have success. My favorite part about this game, though, is the different abilities of the characters. They're a lot of fun, as you'll be able to use them from that basic card A series all the way up to the insanely powerful C's, and whenever you get one of these amazing cards, it feels so fun to play it, get its effect, and everybody at the table is going to be oohing and awing. This game makes a particularly awesome family experience because everybody is going to be pairing off with another person at the table, so it plays all the way from 2 to 8 players. You'll have one person that you're fighting at a time, and then you'll shift seats so that you're playing against a new person, so you're able to have that one-on-one interaction with every single member of your family. It's a lot of fun to watch each other's decks build, progress. You may even get rematches in the same tournament, and then you can congratulate each other as you move on and wonder how that person fared against their next opponent. I think it's such a cool situation. It reminds me of my Yu-Gi-Oh days playing in these tournaments, checking your matchups, and trying to draft cards to do better in the next one. So that is my number 4, Challengers. My number 3 goes to Foundations of Rome, a city building game where you play as architects putting out these large pieces into a central area. Before you place those pieces, though, you have to spend actions to actually purchase the deeds to the land or collect money. And that's one of my favorite parts about this game is its core action system. On your turn, you're presented with one of 3 options. All you can do is get money, use that money for deeds, or use the things you've purchased to put your buildings out. And the order in which you do these is so important because if you don't have the land to place something, you're not going to be able to place big things. If you don't have anything on the board, you're not going to score anything. But if you're spending your time putting stuff on the board, the other players are going to be able to take those deeds before you can. It's an awesome cycle of painful decisions, but it's so simple because it's only 3 choices at a time. It's amazing. What makes Foundations of Rome such a strong family game, it has to do with the interaction that happens in the middle of the board. You know, every single one of those deeds is going to show up at some point, so you're bound to bump into each other. In addition, most of the ways that you score points have to do with what you are surrounded by. So that means you are constantly playing off what the other players are doing. There are ways that you can swap up buildings for different new, bigger ones, and that's going to change the landscape and the scoring potential of everybody. The small decisions are not overbearing, but the implications of each choice are huge. There's also a variety of expansions that you can use to tailor the game to the complexity that your family enjoys, but the simple version of the game is also incredibly strong, as that core foundation of those 3 actions is perfect. So I strongly recommend this one for any family. It really is great from 2 to 5. This is one that I recommend. This is Foundations of Rome, my number 3. My number 2 goes to Acropolis, a tile drafting game all about collecting a variety of scoring opportunities. Now, every round you'll be drafting tiles, putting them to your own personal city, but at the end of the game you'll score points based on those areas that you've heavily invested in. You'll have these stars that you'll multiply by the number of your scoring tiles, and then you'll be able to generate a lot of points based on how big those multipliers are. In addition, this game encourages you to make risky tile placement decisions, as you're encouraged to build up in your city, as that's going to give you more potential for scoring, as well as give you extra bonus stone pieces to allow you to select better pieces. Now, my favorite part about this game is actually the way the different tiles score. It makes a lot of sense multiplying your plazas by the different scoring criteria, and each of the areas scores differently. For example, purple wants to be fully surrounded, yellow wants to be by itself, and as you're overlapping these scoring criteria, you'll feel a satisfying feeling as you're able to match all of these different facets into the way you want to score. It's a great feeling as you're making this all click into place, and you get to score the different areas that you have chosen to invest in. There's also an excellent way that you can increase the difficulty and complexity by adding new ways to score that's going to add on to the factors and the tile placement. Now, the reason this one's such an awesome family game is the criteria for the scoring is universal. It's going to be one that doesn't change, so every time people come back to it, they are going to easily be able to get right back into it and draft a bunch of tiles. The play time is super short, only about 25 minutes, and everybody is always taking tiles. It's something that you can easily invest in, and you can clearly see the amounts of the different tiles, so as they come up, it's going to feel comfortable, and you're going to understand the choices and how important certain tiles are, and when you get a flop of tiles like this, you'll know exactly which ones that you'll need for your strategy, but are you willing to actually spend the resources to take those tiles that you need? There's a lot of lovely decisions in here, and it plays all the way solo up to 4 players. That is Acropolis, my number 2. But my number 1 family game goes to Planet Unknown. This is a polyomino laying game set in outer space as you colonize these new planets, terraforming them with these polyomino tiles. Every round, the person who's first is going to move this Lazy Susan, selecting a tile and putting it in front of them on this little arrow, their depot, and then they're going to take that tile and put it onto their main game board. You're trying to fill up your board as efficiently as possible, and every time you do, you'll also get to go up one of these tracks based on the symbols on the tile that you've placed. Some of these will have meteors, some will give you other abilities, but you're trying to just be as efficient as possible while getting lots of powers, abilities, and little bonuses by climbing up these tracks. And one of my favorite parts about this game is the fact that there's so much asymmetry and customization in it. Every time you play, you can play with that generic board that you saw on the last one, or you can flip them over and have a unique board with its own restrictions. You can do the same thing with your corporation, using the same abilities and becoming familiar with the game, but you can flip them over to have a new unique effect. And when you combine these two things, it makes for a varied experience that's going to keep you coming back, wanting to try all of the different combinations. Another great thing about this is the fact that if you are playing with families and some people aren't comfortable with this, you can have some players flip and use the advanced boards, and then the other players just use that basic generic board. And there's no fault, there's no penalty to doing this. It's something that you can do whenever you're comfortable, and I love that about this game. You're always giving an option of a choice as well as you're playing. When it's your turn, you can pick anything, but otherwise you are just taking what you get. We'll move that Lazy Susan, and you'll have to take that tile that's now in your depot, one of the two. You're always choosing which different symbols you want to go up on, and getting bonuses constantly and consistently throughout the game feels satisfying. There's also a solo mode in case you just want to run it by yourself, event decks that you can use to spice things up even more, but overall this experience will have you coming back, wanting to try the different expansions and module, but feeling satisfied the entire time you're playing because of all these successive bonuses. A wonderful experience, and one that anybody can get into. This is Planet Unknown, my #1 family game from 2022. And that is the list. Those are the best family board games from 2022, and I'm curious to hear what you think of my list and if I missed any that should be on here. What are your favorite family games from 2022? What do you think of these games? Should they be higher, lower? I'm so excited to share these with you because I had an excellent time playing these with my family over the holiday, and I'm curious to hear what you played with your family as well. But thank you so much for watching. SideGame Strong.